Hey, I'm Daniel, and you have found my podcast, the DCOM Team. I am one half of the DCOM team, as I'm usually joined by my friend Bobby and co-host to discuss Disney Channel original movies. But today I am bringing you an interview with Robert Bockstael, who plays Richard Carlyle in the 2002 DCOM The Scream Team, which is one of my personal favorites from my childhood. Yeah, and this conversation is from last October because we did it in, I think, November last year, and I wanted to wait until Halloween to unveil it. Uh, so it's been in the vault for a little bit. It's been interesting revisiting the conversation, seeing how I've changed as an interviewer. I can tell you that I'm more comfortable now on camera than I was then. I've tried to edit out some of my cringe, to be honest. But either way, no, it's a really fun conversation. We cover a surprising amount of topics. Obviously, the Scream Team, the title change from as it was originally called Soul Patrol, talking about Eric Idle from the film, and how Robert was able to spend a bit of time with him. Robert's love for Eric Idle's other work with Monty Python, as well as Robert Bockstael's other work. He has over 100 credits on IMDb, a lot of voice work, a lot of TV. Um, so we cover a bit of that, as well as his work on the famous Chet Jackson, which is pretty interesting. And I usually don't get the chance to ask an actor what he personally thought of the film, because what was really cool for me for this interview was the fact that Robert hadn't seen the movie until this interview. So really unique, really unique trip down memory lane, I think, for both of us, I think. Anyway, I'm rambling. So you could watch the Scream Team on Disney Plus. If you're doing for anything for Halloween or going trick or treating, I wish you a safe evening. And let's get right into the interview.
Hey, Robert.
Hey, how's it going, Daniel?
Good. No, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very, very excited.
Hey, listen, it's my pleasure to be here. It's a stormy day, and I'm in my office, and this is a good thing to be doing right now.
Yeah, very strange, stormy day for both of us because we're both happen to be in Ottawa.
Yeah.
To start with, you told me then when we were setting up this interview that you've never seen the film.
No, I had never seen Scream Team until last night. I watched it last night in its entirety. I think I did see, a little bit of footage when we were doing some additional dialogue recording, maybe a couple of months after the initial shoot while they were editing. I would have been called into the voice studio. And I think I did a couple of additional lines of dialogue for sound. So I got to see the footage, the raw footage then, but
Okay.
only a little bit, only the stuff that I had to do the dialogue recording for, which was kind of minimal. So, and there were no special effects or any of that kind of stuff that had been put into it by then. Not that there were many special effects for many of the scenes that I was actually in, because most of my scenes I was with the kids in the house, right?
Yeah.
There's the big finale at the end, and I didn't see any of that special effect stuff until last night, and that's literally 20 years later.
Now, is it kind of surreal watching this performance of yours for the first time, like 18 years later, or 20?
Yeah, frankly, it was a little surreal. I wasn't expecting it to be because, after a lifetime in this business, I'm kind of accustomed to seeing myself here or there. Although, to tell you the truth, Daniel, I've never been one of these people who've actually sat down and watched many of my performances.
Okay.
I figure once, if the director is happy and if the producers are happy and they've committed it to film, then that's all I need to know. And if I continue getting the jobs, then someone's happy. I don't need to be studying myself. I mean, I did a lot of that when I was younger, maybe when I was very young, starting off, learning the craft, looking at myself going, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. Things like that.
Okay.
But very often that's what a director is for anyway. They're going to tell you you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or stop doing that little thing that you're doing. that's their job. So to see that was a bit, I got to admit, it was a little bit surreal, because I was telling my wife this morning, she said, "How was the movie?" And I said, I had no idea that I was in it that much. No, it's true. Honestly, I mean, really, I thought I had this kind of little bit part in this movie with all of these people who I considered to be stars, and there I was. I kept thinking, I don't remember doing that scene. Oh, I don't remember shooting that scene. Oh, that's a pretty good scene. So it was fun for that reason.
Okay. Yeah, so like I guess that's a big reason why you haven't watched this, is that you just don't watch many of your performances.
I would say that's probably a very big reason, that I don't take any particular interest. Once I've read the script and I've worked on the script and I've done all the shooting and I've moved on to another project and then another project and then another project, I kind of let all that other stuff go. I let this previous film. I mean, I don't know if I've got close to 100 credits on IMDb right now, and I can't tell you. Maybe I've watched half a dozen over the years, and that's mainly because I've been invited to a premiere or something, and I've actually gone. I haven't gone to many. And they don't really have many in the kind of a genre that I worked in a lot. I worked a lot of television. And they don't have a lot of big parties for series television.
Yeah, I think I saw that you had like 102, but a lot of that is like TV. Yeah, shrug. I don't know.
It's mostly television, and it's a lot of cartoon work.
What you said about you were surprised how much you were in it. Like honestly, what I remember when I was a kid, I thought, yeah, I agree. I thought you were more like secondary character, and you are in a way, but you're more like, you're very integral to the family drama of the film and just hanging out with them, and then you do the newspaper investigation, and then you get into the fun of it at the festival. But I was just curious. Was it kind of disappointing not sharing the screen with Kathy Najimy, Tommy Davidson, and Eric Idle? Or
well, to tell you the truth, I really had no idea who any of those people were, except for Eric Idle.
Okay.
I still don't know who they are, frankly. I don't pay a lot of attention to that kind of stuff. I've worked with God knows how many people who, it turns out, I find out later that they're like big stars, but to me, it's just another actor who's coming onto the set, and I'm gonna work with them the same I will work with anyone else, right? I'm not gonna go onto the set and be all starstruck and not be able to do my scene.
Okay.
And now don't forget, this is 20 years ago, so we weren't walking around with these things in our hands looking every second person up on Facebook or on IMDb. We weren't doing that. That didn't exist. So you'd come onto the set, you either knew somebody or by reputation or through the industry, or you didn't, right? Now, I knew Eric Idle from, I was a fan of Monty Python's Flying Circus from the early 70s.
Okay.
When it first came out, I was a diehard fan. When I first met Eric, we did a read-through at a hotel downtown in Toronto. I was quivering at the knees. Honestly, it was like, I don't know who, do you have a big star that you're very fond of? I mean, do you have somebody who you just absolutely idolize?
Well, Robert Bockstael, my knees are quivering now. Quivering now.
Good though. Good. I appreciate it.
None spring to mind, but I know. I know the feeling.
If you were to meet face first with like Ryan Reynolds or with right in the same room, shaking hands with some big, huge contemporary star. Well, that's how I felt when I met Eric. He was like, honestly, it was like, I thought, okay, I remember saying, I can die now. That's how important this guy was in my life at one time. So, and then to sit with him at the read through, and then afterwards to go out to dinner with him, which I did, was fabulous. And then I started to relax, and we had a lot of laughs. We never shared the screen, but we would see each other on set. And when you're on set for a lot of these films, especially in film world, not so much TV world, but in film world, there's a lot of downtime.
Okay.
Like an enormous amount of downtime. Days and days and days sometimes. You're just sitting around waiting for the shot. So sometimes you're sitting in your trailer, sometimes you're sitting out. You know, in those days, everybody used to smoke. So we're sitting outside having cigarettes, we're drinking coffee, and everybody just chattering, right? And so I did get to spend enough time with Eric that I was quite satisfied with that. I didn't spend any time with any of the other actors except the two kids.
Okay.
because we were doing all of our scenes together, we had a lot of time to we would rehearse in each other's trailers. We would, you know, run our lines and all that kind of stuff. Both Mark and Kat's parents were there. Well, Kat's mom was there on set all the time, and Mark's dad was there all the time. And I got along really well with Mark Randall's dad. He was a great guy, and he's my age, and so we had a lot in common. And Mark, of course, was a great kid. They were both great kids. So I got to spend time with them and their parents all at the same time. So that was really enjoyable, and it helped pass the time a lot. And it also allowed me to get to know these kids in a really comfortable and safe environment. So they weren't kind of, you know, creeped out by this man who had to play their father, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not as if the character that I was playing was, you know, he wasn't kind of a tactile person. He wasn't always holding their hands or hugging them or any of that kind of stuff. He was actually kind of a removed, slightly injured man. So he was a little bit distant, which I thought served quite well. It was quite more comfortable for the kids. But going back to Eric Idle, that was awesome. That was, looking at it again last night, I was so happy, thinking, oh yeah, I remember. We laughed. We told a lot of jokes. I taught him how to do this, which like freaked his mind. He was like, how the fuck do you do that? So I showed him.
What trick is that?
Oh, it's a dandy. I'm not going to show you. It's a sound effect I do.
Okay. So anyone listening, you're putting your finger in you're doing a finger in the hand.
Index finger in between the webbing of my other fingers.
Okay.
And I'm placing it against my face, and I am popping it out and creating a vacuum, which then pops. It's a very odd little trick, which I was showing the kids at one point, and Eric came running over going, I need to know how you do that. He was quite excited. Small things, right? But like I say, I didn't hang out with the other actors. Nigel Bennett is an old friend of mine. He's the guy who played Walter, or what was his name?
Warner.
Warner. He's the guy who played Warner.
Okay.
My kind of antithesis in the film. And I've known Nigel for many, many years. And so we had a riot in the little scenes that we interacted in. We really had a good time. Particularly the one where I go to his house looking for the kids. And I'm just about to knock on the door, and he opens the door, and he thinks that I'm about to hit him in the head. It's a nice little bit that we worked out together, and we showed it to the director, Stuart Gillard, and he thought, that's perfect, we got to shoot it that way. So we came up with that bit of business, but it was hard because we were laughing so hard. We had to do multiple takes because we found ourselves very funny doing this thing.
Your own little bit of Monty Python.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Did you ever want to hit him? Or did you?
Did I ever want to actually hit Nigel?
Yeah.
A couple of times. I think it was more likely he wanted to hit me. No. No.
Okay.
I've always gotten along very well with Nigel. He's a great guy, a wonderful actor. I first worked with him many, many years ago on a vampire series called Forever Night, which was a Canadian vampire series. It was a worldwide success with Geraint Wyn Davies playing this guy who was a policeman by day, but he was also a vampire. And Nigel was kind of his nemesis. And I was the first guest star on the TV series to actually appear a second time as a different character. So that was a lot of fun.
Okay. Well, just to talk about one of your other roles, I noticed you have like a lot of additional voices on different series, like on Monster Force. Like you play Dracula and then you play Imhotep the Mummy.
Yes.
So you must be used to doing that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing the different roles.
Well, yes. And it all kind of came to a head at one time in a series for A&E. I don't even know, are they still around? Is that network still around?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, years ago when television first started going into like cable land, and then these private networks, A&E was one of the first really big networks. And they, apart from like NBC, CBS, it broke away and became one of those cable networks.
Sure.
And it was the classy one. It had, kind of upper crust shows. It was high quality television, higher quality than you would get on broadcast television. I think that may have changed over the years and it started showing crappy stuff. I don't know.
Okay.
Like I said, I didn't even know it still existed, considering there's 1,000 channels out there now. But at that time when there were really only a dozen or so, I did a series for A&E called Nero Wolfe. And it's about this private investigator. It was written in the 1930s, I think, the original books. But this was with Timothy Hutton and a number of other luminaries. It had 1 million guest stars. 1 million guest stars.
Okay.
Big stars. Okay. Like huge stars. But Tim Hutton and I became friends on the pilot, and he asked me if I would be a part of a repertory company. And so I think there's 27 1-hour or 90-minute episodes of Nero Wolfe, and he had me in every one as a different character.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a awesome experience. It was just insane. In fact, I think on their fan site, and I'm not sure, I've never been, but somebody told me that there's a game that people play of spotting certain actors, because they changed me and I changed my voice and I changed my mannerisms and shaved my head or put wigs on or scars it was pretty incredible. Sometimes the roles were only like 2 lines and sometimes it was a fairly major character, but it was in every episode. Yeah. He called me his rabbit's foot.
Okay.
So I'm used to playing multiple things.
It's like an Easter egg in every character. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Or every episode.
Yeah, it's true.
So do you have your Dracula impression handy?
No, I wouldn't even remember how I did it.
Okay.
You got to remember, these things were a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right. And I've done an enormous amount of stuff since then.
I only asked you to remember for the Scream team. I didn't ask you for this other stuff.
Yeah. And I had to refresh my memory. I really did. So much so that because I'd never even seen the movie. That's quite funny.
Yeah, no, like I know you mentioned you had a son. He never watched it when he was a kid.
No, my son, I don't know. Maybe he's seen one thing that I've done. So I remember when he was younger, we might have been in a hotel room. We never watched television at home.
Okay.
But I think we might have been traveling. And when you do as many things as I have over the years, you kind of pop up in the strangest places. Yeah, it's weird. So, I remember being I was because really mostly I only watch television when I'm in hotel rooms when I'm traveling for work. And I was shooting a picture in Zimbabwe, and I turned on the TV in the middle of the afternoon, and there was a Canadian television series that I had done 5 years before that was running, but it had been overdubbed in Afrikaans. So that was kind of neat. And another time I was in Eastern Europe shooting a film for Divine Entertainment. And one night, late night, after a bunch of drinks, some of us went back to my hotel room for a final nightcap. And somebody switched on the hotel TV. And there I was, speaking Czechoslovakian, doing one damn thing or another.
I didn't even know I could speak that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm pretty good at that. So I think my son may have seen me while we were traveling doing some show. I think it might have been Wind at My Back.
Okay.
And, I think my wife said, "Oh, look, there's Daddy on the TV." And my son looked at the television, and he looked at me and said, "Nope, that's Daddy here." And that was kind of the end of his interest in ever seeing me on television. He's just not interested.
He was already prepped for those dad jokes.
I mean, he's very proud to know that I have had a decent career in this business.
Okay.
He has seen me on stage, and I think he was much more impressed with that. Seeing me, I was touring for about 2 years. I was touring a one-man show across Canada, and I think he was pretty impressed with that. Not so much seeing me on TV. It's
Okay. He can see you in person, and he could be like, "Oh, okay, no, my father's here, not on the TV."
Exactly.
Okay.
And he can see me any old time.
True.
Yeah.
I guess I was just curious because it's like this movie is, when I was a kid, it was such a Halloween tradition almost, just to watch it all the time. It's very different.
I know for some reason I know why it's a Halloween tradition, or I know why I know it's a Halloween tradition. I never saw it, but every year I would get a little tiny residual check from Disney.
Oh, okay.
Like a little $10 check in the mail or something.
$10.
Oh yeah. No, it's like Canadian actors don't get very much in the way of residuals. I'm afraid to say.
Well, hopefully it's more this year. Maybe $20 with it being on Disney Plus, right?
I don't think I'd get anything. Now that it's on their own channel, I don't think they have to pay me anything. Yeah.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah. Listen, my friend, we oughtn't get into it.
Okay, sounds good.
It's a sore point for a lot of actors, particularly people who have 7 television series that have been in the air, for one of them for 26 years, and I've never received a cent from them. So
is that north of 60?
Yeah, I've never seen a penny.
Ouch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're subject.
Well, I've brought it up in a number of environments, and I've gone to the top to all of the talent payment services and through my union and all of that kind of stuff, and they're just not reporting any earnings. If they don't report any earnings, they're not going to pay any residuals.
Cheating the system. Okay.
I don't know if they're cheating the system. I just don't think that the audience base is big enough for them to be generating any income.
Okay.
So Entertainment One, I believe, purchased the whole series, and they've been airing it on APTN, as far as I know, which has a limited audience, and it doesn't generate any money, really. So it's just hard to know that one's image is up there for years and years and years and years. Someone's benefiting from it, but it's not us.
Okay.
Whereas I have friends and contemporaries who've done one television series in the States, just one that was syndicated, and they never have to work again.
Wow.
So it's kind of hard. Yeah.
So that life of a Canadian television actor.
Yeah. On the plus side, though, this person has had one television series, and that's really all he's ever done. Whereas I've been working steadily for 38 years. So as far as having a satisfying career, I'm better off.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Prolific over money, I guess.
Well, happiness, money doesn't buy you happiness.
Fair.
I mean, you can park your yacht right next to it, but really, it's about job satisfaction. It's about personal satisfaction. It's all of those kind of things, So, yeah.
And hopefully you've enjoyed it over the years as well.
I have. I've enjoyed it enormously. Well, for the most part, every job has its challenges. I've really enjoyed a lot of the work, mostly the Canadian work, because it's my language, it's my syntax, they're my stories, it's familiar. They're crews from our country, directors from our country, all of that kind of thing. So there's a sense of, worries, really. And whenever I've worked on American programs, I find that there's a bit of a disconnect for me. I find that the writing is different, the language is slightly different. A lot of their methodology is different. The way a lot of the directors communicate with actors can be different.
Okay. I'll wrap that back into the Scream team.
Yes, please do. Yes.
Now, because this is filmed in a town called Steeple Falls that is in Massachusetts, but this is filmed in Toronto, right?
It was filmed in a small town outside of Toronto.
Okay.
God, I'm trying to remember the name of it. But I think I was on a series called The Famous Jet Jackson for a number of years. And I think we filmed either in that town or one adjacent to it for all of our exteriors.
Okay.
And a lot of the production team that were involved on Scream Team were also involved on Jet Jackson. There was a lot of crossover Canadian Disney kind of stuff going on there. Lovely little town in southern Ontario. Yeah. But I think it was northeast of Toronto.
Okay. Yeah, I actually watched a little bit of an episode of Famous Jet Jackson last night just to see what character you played. And I was surprised to hear the very New Orleans accent.
Yeah, Mr. Dupree. He was quite a character, that old Mr. Dupree. I really enjoyed playing that guy I think it was probably for about 3 years. I was doing another series at the same time, so I was going back and forth. I remember racing back and forth between sets year after year. But getting into Mr. Dupree's shoes was always quite a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was an interesting cat. And they also had some fun guest stars on that show. And I had no idea who they were either until much later.
Okay. Now,
When, you know, I remember, well, somebody said to me, God, it must have been almost, like 5 years later or something. Somebody said to me, oh, well, what about that time you worked with Beyonce? And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, well, the time you worked with Beyonce. I'm like, I didn't know even who Beyonce really was. And he said, well, when you were on Jet Jackson, you had this whole scene with her and everything. Oh yeah, right. This young, as far as I knew, she was a musician with this group called Destiny's Child, and all the young actors were quite excited about, Destiny's Child. And I'm like, I have no idea who they are. But anyway, I had these two scenes with this young lady who was really very, very lovely and very friendly, and she worked hard. We ran our lines together and stuff. It turns out that she's somebody really famous.
See, now that the star she's grown today, like that's someone my knees are buckling around. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I thought so too later, but at the time, it was better for me. I mean, she was obviously not as famous as she is now back then.
Sure.
And at the time, it's better for me not to know who these people are. I mean, because it affected all the other kids that were on the series were all like, and they had a hard time doing the scenes, right?
Okay.
Whereas I was just like, I don't know who you are. It's fine. Let's just do the scene.
Just let me get my New Orleans accent on. Let's just do it.
And that was easy. I just had to put a candy in my mouth and it was done. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Now I find that interesting, like with the Scream team, because you worked with Kat Dennings, obviously, and
yeah.
This was her third professional project when she did the Scream team, and now she's playing a part in the Thor movies, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. That's just kind of cool working with her before she broke out, I guess, because this was even before her feature film debut.
Yeah, I mean, Kat was her and her mom were pretty focused on. They had their eyes on the prize. They had the brass ring, firmly in sight. This was definitely a career trajectory from the time she was even younger than when I met her.
Okay.
So this was definitely a stepping stone along the way as far as they were concerned. And I know that her mom, worked her pretty hard and kept her kind of focused. And Kat, she was going along for sure. This was something she wanted as well. Her mom wasn't forcing her into this.
Okay.
And she was always prepared and all of that. But she did like to get away from her mom from time to time. Because she was underage when she did this film.
Okay.
Right. So, it's always hard when you've got somebody constantly looking over your shoulder, constantly needing to know where you are, who you're talking to, what's going on, and saying, get your homework done, learn your lines, blah, 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 blah. It was kind of tough for her.
Okay.
Because, she was I think she was just turning 16 or something. And so that it's kind of difficult time in your life, right? There's no dating going on. There's nothing. This is just the work. And I saw a lot of that on the Jet Jackson set as well.
Okay.
With poor Lee.
Yeah.
And he was a wonderful, wonderful young man, just incredibly talented and generous and sweet. That the first thing he did with the first paychecks that he got on Jet Jackson was he bought a house for his mother.
That's got chills. Oh.
Truth, man. Yeah. Kat was great. I really liked working with Kat. We laughed a lot.
Okay.
I think she was kind of surprised that for an old guy, I was pretty relaxed.
Okay.
I like to have fun, and I like to treat kids the same way as I treat any adult. And I think she found that kind of refreshing.
Okay.
So we actually had a lot of laughs. That whole sequence where there was just the two of us with the at the end with the monster and the festival and the party and that big finale. That sequence took a couple of nights to shoot, and because it was just Kat and me, Mark wasn't in the scene. We ended up being there for hours and hours and hours and hours when we weren't shooting, and God, we laughed. We had some great jokes. We laughed so much. It was a lot of fun.
Okay.
So years later, I saw her in the Infinite Playlist picture, and I thought, okay, she's on her way. And I was very, very happy for her. I didn't know that, and she had a series recently, didn't she? Two unemployed young ladies. I don't know what it's called.
Sorry, Two Broke Girls.
Two Broke Girls. I was trying to be, what do they call that? Politically correct.
I like that title better. Two unemployed young ladies.
Young ladies. Yeah. So and now you say she's doing these other big pictures. That's great. Good for her.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. Yeah. So I was very curious to ask. In that scene that you're talking about at the end, at the festival with
Yes.
Zachariah Call, in the big bonfire.
Coates.
Yeah.
Kim Coates, another guy I worked with. Yeah.
I am. Oh my gosh, I forgot that was Kim Coates and not Elias Koteas because I'm such a big fan of that actor, Kim Coates.
Kim Coates, I mean, Jesus, the Sons of Anarchy. Holy crap, man. I mean, he's
I got
like
them
a
confused.
superstar.
Oops.
Yeah.
He's
Kim Coates is he's quite a guy.
that is now. You didn't share that scene with him because he was they just put him in post production, right?
I only ever saw him on that shoot. I only ever saw him a couple of times on set when he was getting ready to do other stuff.
Okay.
Because we were never in the same scene together. But we hung out one day in the studio. We were shooting in a studio. Some of the bedroom sequences when they were jumping the beds around and stuff. They rebuilt that bedroom from the house. And they built it in a studio so they could do weird things. And Kim was there that day shooting a lot of his stand-up stuff for The Ghost.
Okay.
And we hung out a bit on the set, for a couple hours, smoking cigarettes, as we were wont to do.
Okay.
But I had done something else with him before that, so I knew. But we also had a friend in common, a guy who was on North of 60 for many years. Lubomir was best friends with Kim, and I had just directed Lubomir in a play, so we were talking a lot about that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, going back to the bonfire, is it just you and Kat just talking to, just pretending to talk to? You're just talking to a big bonfire with him not in it.
There wasn't even a fire. They had a fire down below, as I recall, but it was gas, right? It was a gas fire, so they could just turn it off and turn it on as they wanted to.
Okay.
So it was all fake logs and then this gas. But then they had a crane sitting up there with a camera on it and a light, and that's what we had to look at. Oh, and they had, I think, a sheet of green screen.
Okay.
And there was a megaphone up there. The first AD was up there with a megaphone. Okay, and boom, this is what happens. Big explosion. Everybody look this way. Right? So we had to, do all that nonsense. It's what actors have to learn to do more and more and more with all this CGI and green screening. That's so popular nowadays. You really have to learn how to do that stuff.
That's awesome though. Like, what's it like watching that 20 years later and just seeing Kim put into it?
You know, it's nothing special nowadays. Um,
For
but 20 years ago, it was cutting edge. You know, that's the thing. I mean, I used to teach. I had a classes that I was teaching for 5 years at this acting company, and I used to ask my students to watch a film a week.
okay,
Um, and one of the films I always recommended was Jaws, because I think it's a brilliant film made by a brilliant filmmaker at the peak of his powers when he was young.
yeah,
Um, and it also, a friend of mine is in the movie, Richard Dreyfuss, who I worked with years later, is in the picture, and I think he's hilarious in the picture.
yeah,
Yeah, and the script is genius. It's just genius. But I always ask my students to watch it
okay,
because it started a whole train of other films kind of in that genre, but it was, X. And they all say, oh, the shark was so fake. The shark was so fake. Oh, the foot falling down in the water was so fake. It looks so fake. Then, guys, that's not what the movie was about, right? At the time, that stuff was cutting edge. That was as good as you could get. It was Spielberg, for crying out loud. It was the best special effects that you could get, right?
yeah,
So you just have to kind of, suspend your disbelief a little bit. Just because we look at that scene in the Scream Team now and see Kim Coates' face up in that, pumpkin and throwing things around, and seeing those special effects as being, well, they're a little cheesy. You can suspend your disbelief. You just go, well, that's not what the movie's about. It's not
yeah,
about the special effect. It's the story that's interesting, right?
yeah. And I mean, I think it has a cheesy charm too, because I just ever since I was a kid, he was one of my favorite ghost stories with you just telling it by the fire and just the whole story of it. I love that aspect.
Right, right. I can see that. I had completely forgotten that element of the movie when I saw it last night. The little ghost story by the fire. I had completely about that scene, and that was one of my favorite scenes in the picture
Me too. Can
because
now
it's simple and it's true, and we all have had that experience in one way or another. So it's a very common experience for all kids, right?
being told ghost stories.
Yeah. And it's nice. They're lit by the fire. They're sitting there, and it's their dad telling them the story, but he's not overdoing it, but he's doing it. Um, so I thought it was certainly one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it is so true. It's so universal.
Yeah, and now I watch my movies with subtitles, and I liked how it says deep, scary voice when you go, you can see it in his eyes.
Is that what I say?
Yeah, like now, yeah, because I had it written down here in my notes, somewhere. I don't know where, but yeah, you're like, because when it catches fire and it's just him left, like he just shot of you saying you could see it in his eyes.
Oh, that's right. I dropped my voice. Well, they didn't do anything to my voice. I do that myself, right? That just
Okay,
You can see it in his eyes.
that's what I was going for. Thank you. Do way better than me. Than I ever could. I forgot to ask this about when I was talking to you about you watching the movie for the first time, which I think is so interesting. What did you think of it?
what did I think of the movie itself?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have to remember I'm 60 years old
Okay.
and I've seen a lot of movies. And I've been in a
That's
lot
true.
of movies, right? And I've been in a lot of movies. So I have to say that I was, despite the fact that I was in it, in spite of that, I was entertained all the way through. Uh, there were a couple of moments in the where all the ghosts are in that, what's that room called, the
The Soul Retrieval Center. It's only
exactly,
6.
there were a couple of scenes in the Soul Retrieval Center that I thought went on just a little bit too long.
Okay.
That they could have maybe cut a little bit out of them, but they were using them as kind of a chance for the audience, who I would think is comprised mostly of very young people, to
And
take a
me.
little breath, you know. Well, but for you, it's also something that you prize as a childhood memory, right?
True.
I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And it still is. And not because it's a work of genius, but because it marks a very, very important part of my childhood. And I remember thinking it was the most entertaining thing I'd ever seen when I was a kid.
Okay.
And also it was made by the complete, you know, Bond team, produced by Albert Broccoli, and it was written by all of those guys. I mean, it had a lot going for it. But it was, you know, looking at it now, it's like, well, it's not a work of genius, but it's important to me. I would suspect that this movie is important to a lot of people of your generation.
Fair.
And I can see why, because it has kind of all of those elements in it of a good Halloween story. It's got a little scare. It's got the little fake scares that come along, you know, where you kind of go, oh. It's got all that stuff, right? It's got a little bit of the cheesy special effects, but for a kid, it's not that cheesy. You know, so what did I think of it? I thought it was highly watchable. I thought that it was true to itself. I thought that it should have been called what it was originally called. But you know, whoever chooses the titles, I don't know. They just thought it was, well, maybe more universal. But we shot it as something else. It wasn't called the Scream Team when we shot it.
Well, can I ask what it was originally called?
Yeah, it was called the Soul Patrol.
Oh, sure, with Jumper and
Yeah, well, that's why
Ed.
they make such a big deal out of it. We're the Soul Patrol, and they do this song and they do the thing, and there's all this music, and every time they get together, and it's like, okay, Soul Patrol, let's go. It was called the Soul Patrol.
Okay, because I thought that was weird because like they do the theme song, but this theme is the Scream Team.
That was rewritten. That was written later, yeah, but it was originally called the Soul Patrol. Yeah.
Okay, now. I'm just trying to think of like me saying, "Oh yeah, Soul Patrol was my favorite DCOM," or one of them, instead of the Scream Team, because like, geez.
I was quite surprised when I found out that they had called that movie the Scream Team. I was quite surprised. I think it was my manager at the time said that, oh well, they've released that movie that you made last year, and I was like, which one? And they said, oh, the Scream Team. I was like, I never made a movie called the Scream Team. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, no, it was Soul Patrol. Oh, right. Okay, good, great. Cool.
Bad title.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the Scream Team maybe has more of a punch to it. And Soul Patrol maybe has other connotations. You know, Disney has a kind of a reputation, and they want to steer clear of certain things, right? So Soul Patrol might have connotations that they didn't want to associate with this movie. I don't know. We've got to remember too that I think that the Famous Jet Jackson was the only series that they made up until that point with all Black main characters in it.
Oh, true.
And so I think Disney was still going through some growing pains when they did Scream Team.
Okay.
In terms of getting into the 21st century. So maybe Soul Patrol to them was still not quite where they wanted to be. All I know is that Scream Team came as a bit of a surprise when I heard it.
Yeah.
Say what?
I did Soul Patrol, not this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so about your work on famous Jet Jackson, is that what helped you get the role on this film?
Interestingly, I have no idea. I was giving that a little thought this morning, because the producer, Kevin May, was the producer, and I had done a series with him, but it was a different series. It wasn't. I don't think it was. Maybe he was on Jet Jackson as well. I'd done another one called Our Hero, and I think Kevin May was producing that. And Gordon was another one of the producers, and he was the first AD on a film that I did in Africa years before.
Okay.
I knew some of the players, right? I knew some of the guys, but ultimately, to tell you the truth, it's just Disney that they authorize everything, right? They have total control over everything. So the Canadian service producers can suggest, I want actor A and actor B and actor C. If they're not vetted and cleared by Disney in Los Angeles, they don't get the role.
Okay.
So I was already vetted and cleared because of Jet Jackson. And I auditioned, and I guess they liked the audition, and I got the part based on that, but I was already cleared. This is what I was told, how it worked. I don't know how much truth there is to that. We're getting into a gray area here.
Okay.
There's the one clear thing is that you just never ever diss Disney.
So we won't say anything bad.
You don't diss Disney.
Because they rule everything.
Yes, and there is an expression that's out there, and it's throughout the entire entertainment industry. You don't fuck with the mouse. And it's true.
It is true.
Yep, it's true. I don't know. Maybe Jet Jackson had something to do with me getting this movie. It's possible. The timing was right. But we as Canadian actors, we all have to audition for everything.
Okay.
It's not like somebody comes along and offers us stuff very often, if ever.
Do you remember your first reaction in reading the script? But that might be going a bit far back.
Well, I do remember the read-through of the script, which is when you actually get the kind of what they think is going to be the shooting script.
Okay.
Quite often before that, you're only given little pieces of the script for your audition. They don't send you the whole script. And so I got the script the day I arrived for the read-through at the hotel in Toronto. So I managed to glance through it a little bit before reading the whole thing with the rest of the cast, whoever was available. We sat together at a table and read through it. And I remember thinking a lot of it was quite funny, especially the kids. They had these kind of wry little quips, all the way through. There's these little pops of humor, and they're gentle, and sometimes they're a little punny, but they're always gentle, and they're widely understood. It's not like some kind of secret hidden humor just for adults, the way Warner Brothers does and stuff like that. It's out in the open, and it's for everyone, right? And I quite liked that. I have to tell you, Daniel, I was coming out of some really dark films before that. So it was really, really nice for me to be playing in a wholesome family drama comedy. I was really happy to be doing it because I'd been doing some really dark stuff before that.
Okay, so a little nice to get the light in there after the heavy.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. Yeah, I'd played a whole string of really ugly, bad, nasty characters who had no redeeming qualities whatsoever, and it was good to get out of that. So to answer your question simply, I specifically remember at the read-through being quite happy that I was involved in this project.
Okay, cool. No, about the there's not a lot of adult humor. I think the only thing I caught in this watch was the very simple thing of Eric Idle seeing the hot cheerleader and walking off screen, and then the scene ends.
And you know that's not in the script. You just know that it's Eric who did that, right?
Yeah.
You just know that it is. And he probably did it on the set time and time again. And Stuart, the director, probably said, "Okay, look, Eric, maybe let's try one without you doing it, and one with you doing it,
Yeah.
and then we'll decide when we do the cut. We'll see if there's a bit of comedy that's required at that point,
Okay.
right?" So, but you can be sure it came from Eric. Eric was on all the time. It can be tiring to be with someone who's that funny, because they're just on all the time. So it gets a little exhausting. You try to have a serious conversation and they're just making fucking jokes all the time.
I know him from this movie and from Casper, and then now I've watched a couple of the Monty Python, but yeah, it's interesting knowing him from different places, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, he's had a long and storied career, that's for sure. And he's done an enormous amount of producing. I mean, he produced Spamalot on Broadway.
Okay.
And I think he wrote it. He also wrote a lot of the music for all the Monty Python films. He writes these crazy songs. Yeah, you should listen to some of them. Yeah, they're really out there.
The Monty Python ones?
Well, a lot of them were associated directly with Monty Python, but also these are just he has recorded a lot for himself.
Okay. I'm sure I've heard one on YouTube, but I couldn't think of the melody or how the words go. But I will take a note. I will look at some of his other work, musically wise. Okay.
Yeah, musically. He wrote the famous song at the end of The Life of Brian, which was a takeoff of The Life of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Where they're all up on the cross. They've all been crucified. Brian and these two thieves, and they break into singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life."
Oh.
And it's how the movie ends. It's absolutely brilliant, and it's a great song. It's hilarious, totally unexpected in the movie. So funny, so darkly funny. Yeah.
Okay, now I don't think I've ever seen Life of Brian, but I'm gonna watch it soon.
Well, it's interesting. It's a very interesting film on many levels, because all of the creators of Life of Brian, all of the Monty Python gang, were all extremely well-educated individuals who knew what they were talking about. They'd all done their research. They all graduated from like Oxford, and right, very, very smart individuals.
Sure.
Some were doctors, and so when it came to telling this story, which is a parallel story, they weren't mocking anybody. They were telling a parallel story that never happened. They were being as historically correct as they could be, given the politics of the time in that area of the world, and they placed this goofy little story in the middle of it. My first father-in-law from a previous marriage was an ex-Catholic priest. He had left the priesthood to marry, and I watched that film with him the first time because he was a Monty Python fan as well.
Okay.
And he thought it was the single funniest thing he'd ever seen. And not only that, he said, "They're right." All the way through it, he was saying, "They're right. They're right. That's right." Right.
That's awesome. Okay.
Give it a try.
Okay, I will. Also, in the film, there's a big aspect of fathers and sons. I was curious, what was it like playing that kind of tense relationship with Mark? I have so many notes here. Thank you.
Rendell. Yeah.
What was it like playing into that relationship with him?
It was easy. He made it easy. He was a lovely young actor, and continues to be, from what I understand. So that relationship was, we slipped into it very, very, very easily. I had a very difficult relationship with my own father, so I could draw on all of that, all those disappointments and all that sadness. That was easy.
Okay.
I also was very good friends with Gary Reinecke, who was the guy who played the dead grandfather, my father in the movie. Gary's still alive. Gary's still alive. He's in a care home in Toronto now, as far as I know. And I don't know if he's aware of what's going on anymore, but he had a long and storied career, and he had a lot of horrible tragedy in his life. But he always kept his equanimity, and he was a wonderful, talented man. I toured a show across Canada with him at one time.
Okay.
So it was really great to have him playing my father. It made this scene between him and I at the end very easy. It was very enjoyable. He was also friends with the director, Stuart Gillard. They went way, way back. And it was Stuart who asked specifically for Gary, because Gary was a little on the down and outs at that point, from what I understand. So I think Mark being on set with his father and me being good friends with Gary playing my father, I think the fathers and sons kind of dynamic was quite clear and present. And I don't recall ever having any difficulty with us getting to those places we needed to go.
Okay, that's really cool. And it's a really nice moment though with your father Frank in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I already forgot the actor's name. Sorry, Gary.
Gary, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a very nice moment. My buddy Bobby, who I co-host with, he had sent me a couple questions, and he was just wondering, because he said maybe he would have wanted more tears there. He was just curious if there was any decision making that went into that with the no tears, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. It's an interesting question, and it's often those choices are made between the director and the actor. Sometimes the actor will present that as a choice that they have, as an option, as a choice that they've made during rehearsal, because you get to rehearse a couple of times before you shoot it. Often the director will say, can you see if you want to go a little further with it in this take? Let's see how far we want to take it, just so that we have the option when we cut it together. Maybe we need something a little more sentimental. But I never got the sense that Stuart was that kind of director who wanted people to wear their hearts on their sleeves. I think he wanted it to be more realistic.
Okay.
And I'm also the type of actor who I prefer to let the audience do the crying.
Fair. Okay.
Why should I do the work for them? It's like this. There's too much of that goes on, as far as I'm concerned. There's too many actors who just do all the work, and then we just, as audience members, we just have to sit back as a bunch of voyeurs and not have anything affect us. And I think that's not fair. I think you've got to force the audience into doing some work. Otherwise, they're not involved. There's no stake. There's no relationship between them and the film or the movie or whatever, the show. I think it's better to let them be affected, let the audience be affected. Now, am I correct in assuming that when you were younger, or maybe even now, you're affected by that moment?
Now, I can't speak to when I was younger, but I definitely got choked up here, because I think to your point, I think I read somewhere where it's better acting if you don't cry, I guess, if you like, it's better to hold in the tears, because I think that moment's more rewarding when you smile at them and it's like, you know, you both are emotional, but I guess it's powerful either way.
We spend so much of our lives as human beings covering up our emotions. And so sometimes when you're acting, what you're just trying to portray is honesty, and being honest to some of those moments, you're trying to cover up. You're trying to hide your emotions. You're not accustomed to just letting them out. And these are two guys who they hadn't been able to communicate all their lives. Look, if you watch the scene, Gary talks about that. I was never able to tell you. I wanted you to go off and live your life, but I couldn't talk to you about it. Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of the underlying thing, is that there was a miscommunication. And certainly of my generation and previous, there was no communication between fathers and sons. I mean, there might have been a slap on the back once in a while, but there was none of this, oh, son, let me give you a hug and tell you how much I love you and let's cry. There was none of that shit. That's just, sorry. And certainly not in movies. That was just verboten, right? So to play the truth of that moment between those two characters would be these two people who are trying their best to express their emotions without falling prey to them, without giving in to them. Okay. They're both acknowledging that they've come to this understanding, this meeting point, and the biggest thing they can do is sit down and talk for half an hour. He's been granted a reprieve from death in order to be able to talk to his son. That tells it all. We don't need to waste time crying.
Fair enough. Yeah, and there's it's very rewarding getting that closure, I guess. And I think I wouldn't have gotten that sense when I was a kid because not mature enough, but it's like watching it as an adult, it's like, okay, like everyone has a dad. No, everyone might not know their dad, but there's just something very relatable about that, like getting to say what needs to be said, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. So many people I know who have lost their parents and regret not being able to tell them certain things, not being able to ask them certain things, having missed that chance. And so that, that's what that scene's about. It's about a found opportunity,
Mm-hmm. And
so it's a gift.
And it's kind of lovely for a kid's Halloween movie.
Yeah. I was quite surprised, and that would definitely be more for the adults in the room who are watching it with their kids. Just a little life lesson to say, communicate with your kids now, express your emotions with your kids now, while you're alive, while you can. Turn to them now and say things. Don't wait. That's probably what that little lesson is in the movie.
Fair.
Yeah.
Now this is just kind of a little fun one. There's a pumpkin fight at the end of the film.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that was the first pumpkin fight you've ever had?
Yeah, and I think, as I recall, it was the first day of shooting.
Oh, really?
I believe it was the first scene that we shot. Now, I may be mistaken, but it seems to me that we went to that location and it was freezing cold that day. So much so that we were wearing parkas between shots. And we had to wear light fall clothing.
Okay.
For the scene. And the pumpkin goo itself was so cold and so disgusting, and we had to keep cleaning and changing clothes between takes, right? because you'd get this pumpkin shit all over you. And it's like, okay, well, we missed some technical thing, so we've got to change. So they had multiple wardrobe for us, and we had to keep going back into the trailer and changing and getting all cleaned off. Makeup had to clean us off and then reapply our. I remember it being a kind of a long, cold, wet, slimy day.
Okay. But
And I don't think we were having a whole hell of a lot of fun.
it's a
And I don't think we really knew each other. We didn't know each other very well, you know. Some of the scenes later on, like we've saved the big giant carnival fair scene for the very end of the shoot.
okay.
Like I say, Kat and I were laughing our arses off by then. We were friends, and we'd spent weeks off and on hanging out for hours and hours, talking and developing jokes and all that.
Sure.
But that first day, I recall it being cold and wet and uncomfortable, and sliding and slipping in this pumpkin stuff. I still have those shoes, actually. They gave me all the wardrobe from that movie. It used to be my contract that I would get all the wardrobe that I wanted from any movie I was in. So and a lot of those clothes, I really quite liked them. So I still wear the jacket, and I have a pair of those shoes from that pumpkin fight. They still have pumpkin stains on the front.
Do you have them in your office?
These are they.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Oh, I see the pumpkin on the bottom. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Just seeing the little pumpkin on the footprint. That's great. Yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of awkward for, maybe not awkward, but that's kind of funny for bonding. That's the first scene that you shoot.
Yeah, you're literally, we had a fight with this wet pumpkin stuff, and you're throwing stuff, you know, it's cold and wet, and you're throwing it into the face of a perfect stranger. It's kind of strange, you know.
Yeah, and it's more intimate than a snowball fight.
Yeah, because you're only a few feet away.
That's true.
I don't know. Poor Kat was suffering. I remember that. She was like, it was so gross. It was so disgusting, this stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, and like I noticed, I'm being nitpicky. I guess it was a bit of a continuity error. Just when a big blob of pumpkin, it gets shot at you, and then the next shot is very much smaller, but probably too gross having that big blob on yourself anyway.
You know, as I recall, we did multiple takes, so who knows? You know, who knows?
Oh, fair enough. I was also curious. Have you ever been recognized for this film?
You know, I can't say that I get recognized very often, and I never did.
Okay.
Because I always tried to change my look, and I always or I played a guy like this who was quite fairly nondescript and ineffectual. So really, it was one of my great goals in life, in my career when I first started off in 1979, was that I never wanted to be recognizable. Okay. And I didn't. I remember doing something a long time ago, and it was fairly popular, and I would get recognized for it in unexpected places, and it made me very uncomfortable. And I realized that wasn't a feeling that I particularly wanted to chase. Okay. I was never interested in celebrity. I was interested in doing the work. And all of the actors that I admire, that I have worked with over the years, the ones that I admire have been like-minded. They're not in it for celebrity. They're not in it for fame. It's a big, big difference. And I have worked with people who were in it for celebrity, and I never liked them. I didn't like them. sense. And I've worked with a lot of really, really, really big stars, and a lot of people who became big stars. And there was something about that need for attention, and that craving, that I found slightly distasteful, because it's hollow. There's nothing in it. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't get you any further in life. It doesn't make you a better person, and it certainly doesn't sign your checks. So it's one of the negative aspects of the business, I would say, because I used to hang out quite a bit with Timothy Hutton when we were shooting the Nero Wolfe series. We used to go drinking a lot together. He was a prodigious drinker, as I was in those days. And we used to go out, after we'd wrap, we'd go out to these bars and we would drink our faces off and have a great time. But he would always be recognized because, I mean, the guy was an Academy Award winner, right? Is an Academy Award winner. So he's very famous and very recognizable, easily recognizable, because he always looked exactly the same for everything that he did. He made it a point. And his father was famous, and he looks exactly like his father. So generationally, he's a recognizable face in, the mind of the public.
Sure.
And I always found it so uncomfortable. So when these people would, and sometimes people were a little bit too cloying. Sometimes people were a little too familiar. Sometimes, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And I thought, boy, oh boy, I'm glad that doesn't happen to me. Yeah.
Now, I'm listening to this, and I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable 2 years ago at Digi60 when I recognized you for
didn't.
this. Okay.
But you didn't. I mean, your approach was very gentlemanly and very professional. You weren't one of these gushing. I marked you right away as not being a crazy person. Otherwise, I wouldn't be.
I appreciate it. Like, I could have been like, Robert Bockstael.
Yeah, that's when I turn around and start running.
Forget Digi60. I'm out of here.
Exactly.
No, but yeah, people listening, we were both in Ottawa, and 2 years ago, I was volunteering at Digi60, which is a film festival in Ottawa, and I was working at the, what is it? I guess a name booth where I check people's names up coming in. Yeah. And then I think a few months prior I'd watched this film, and then there's Richard Carlyle. And I was like, oh, because my buddy didn't know, because he had never, he's from India, so he'd never seen the film, and I'm like, this is a big deal for me.
But I thought this film was huge in India.
I mean, apparently some of yours are big in what was it, Zimbabwe?
Yeah, Zimbabwe. It's known as a dumping ground for Canadian television. Or it was at one point during the 80s. So they could buy second run Canadian television for cheap. They would just dump it there.
That's interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Cool. Now I had some questions about your other career, but I think you've been generous with your time. Maybe because I think the famous Jet Jackson is a DCOM, so maybe I'll have you back on for that one.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah.
We can do that. I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah. So I'll just save those questions for then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, listen. It's a pleasure talking to you. So we can schedule another time and we can have another chat.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Honestly, this is I love every interview I do, but this is nostalgia is a powerful drug. This has made me happy to have you on this podcast.
Well, I understand it's a powerful drug because the weird thing is because I am of a certain age, there's a lot of the stuff that I did that is now nostalgia. I got invited to like the Comic-Con kind of thing, and it's amazing how many people came up to my booth who were, like we were talking about, trembling at the knees, going, oh, you were in this, or you were in that, or you played this, or you played that. I've been watching that since I was a kid. And, I was okay because I had a table between me and them. And I had two guys who were my strong arms on either side who, could keep people away. And luckily, because I'm an old fart, nobody really wanted to, kind of take a piece of my hair or clothing. But it was interesting to see that sentimental thing in play. I remember that from when I was a kid, because I never pictured that ever happening to me in my life, that I would ever a sentimental element. But I'm certainly happy to talk about these things, because I never really talk about them with anybody else.
That's hilarious, though, that people weren't trying to grab your hair. But now that I know you're in Ottawa, I might try to come grab those pumpkin shoes.
Good luck. From my cold, dead hands.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Robert.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Daniel.
Robert Bockstael.
Yep. Perfect.
/ Richard Carlyle. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you.